He recorded everything.
Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is...
Surveillance cameras have become silent witnesses to humanity's darkest moments, capturing crucial evidence that helped crack seemingly unsolvable crimes. From honeymoon murders to decades-old hate crimes, prison breaks to international abductions, these disturbing cases demonstrate how modern technology transforms criminal investigations and delivers justice. For 18 years, the world has held its breath, waiting for answers in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, the 3-year-old British girl who vanished without a trace from a Portuguese holiday resort in 2007. Now, time is running out. German police have just completed a desperate search of 21 properties near Praia da Luz, the seaside town where Maddie disappeared. They brought in ground-penetrating radar, inspected abandoned wells, searched derelict buildings, all of it focused on one man, Christian Bruckner, a convicted pedophile and rapist who lived in the area when Madeleine vanished. But here's the terrifying reality. If they don't find forensic evidence soon, Bruckner walks free in September when his current prison sentence ends. Charlie Hedges, former head of the UK National Crime Agency's Missing Children Unit, puts it simply, time is certainly running out. If Christian Bruckner walks, it's going to be difficult to pursue things any further. The case hinges on finding that one piece of evidence, that golden nugget, as investigators call it, something concrete that links Bruckner to the crime. Without it, an alleged monster could return to society. And one woman knows exactly what that means. Her name is Hazel Behan. In 2004, 3 years before Madeleine disappeared, Hazel was 20 years old, working a holiday job in Portugal. One night, she made a decision that would haunt her forever. She went home alone, for the first time. I lay on the bed, and I fell asleep, Hazel recalls, and I was woken by somebody calling my name. When she opened her eyes, she saw a man dressed entirely in black, wearing a mask, holding a knife. What followed was a night of unspeakable horror.
It didn't work like that. He set up video cameras, he recorded everything. He recorded me close up.
The intruder bound her, whipped her, raped her 3 times. He set up video cameras and recorded everything.
He recorded everything. He recorded me close up.
He positioned her in ways that made her believe she was about to die. I thought he was going to just chop my head off, Hazel says, her voice steady but weighted with pain. Whether he killed me physically or not, spiritually that was me. I was gone. I was done that day. But the nightmare didn't end when her attacker finally left. Portuguese police failed her completely. They didn't believe her story. They followed her around town to see if she was a prostitute. 4 days after the attack, her apartment remained untouched. The bloody sheets were still on her bed. Her fingernails, torn off during the struggle, were still embedded in the bedding. No forensic evidence was ever collected. Then, in 2020, Hazel saw a photo on the news. British police had identified Christian Bruckner as the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case. Hazel's reaction was visceral. I just felt sick. I ended up running to the toilet. I was dry-heaved. I knew instantly that it was him. Despite wearing a mask during the attack, Hazel remembered critical details. His German accent, his build, his eyes, and something else, a distinctive mark on his right thigh, something she reported to police back in 2004. Years later, when German authorities forced Bruckner to undergo a physical examination, they photographed a scar in that exact location. In October of last year, Hazel faced her alleged attacker in a German courtroom. She was testifying in a trial where Bruckner faced charges for raping 3 women and sexually assaulting 2 children. The stakes couldn't have been higher. A conviction would keep him behind bars indefinitely, buying prosecutors time to build their case against him for Madeleine's disappearance. German journalist Jutta Rabe, who attended every day of the trial, watched Hazel's courage. She was very brave, and she was very clear in what she told. Raby says. It was hard to listen to that, but the judge acquitted Brickner of all charges. Despite believing Hazel had been raped, the judge ruled she couldn't definitively identify the masked man as Brickner. Critical evidence, including the photograph of his leg scar, was never presented in court. Rabe witnessed something disturbing during the proceedings. The first thing the judge is doing, she's screaming at witnesses in an almost hysterical way. She's threatening them. That was a clear signal that she was absolutely on his side. Meanwhile, investigators have uncovered chilling evidence at properties connected to Brickner. 75 toddler swimsuits, children's bikes and toys, chemicals used for sedation, USB drives containing conversations with other pedophiles and written fantasies about abducting and raping mothers and children. German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters has stated publicly, "We have evidence that Christian Bruckner murdered Madeleine McCann, but he won't reveal what that evidence is, and without forensic proof, Bruckner could walk free." Hazel believes, if Portuguese police had properly investigated her attack in 2004, everything would be different. "I believe that Madeleine would still be at home with her parents," she says. Now, she's taking her fight to the European Court of Human Rights, demanding accountability for the investigation that never happened. As for forgiveness, Hazel is clear. "You don't deserve to get forgiveness from me. Absolutely not. You've taken enough. The clock is ticking, and the world is watching." Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. On the 6th of June, 2015, something impossible happened. 2 convicted murderers vanished from one of America's most secure prisons. What followed was a manhunt that would grip the nation for 22 days, ending in bloodshed near the Canadian wilderness. This is the story of how they escaped, how they survived, and how it all came crashing down. Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. They call it Little Siberia. Maximum security, steel and concrete, a place designed so that no one gets out. But David Sweat and Richard Matt were not ordinary prisoners. Sweat had murdered a sheriff's deputy. Matt had killed his former boss and dismembered the body. These men were dangerous, calculating, and desperate. And somehow, they found a way. For 5 months, they planned in secret, cell by cell, pipe by pipe.
It sounds like somebody in the prison granted their request to be put next to each other. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I understand.
They lived next door to each other in the honor block, a twisted stroke of luck that gave them the access they needed. But they didn't do it alone. Joyce Mitchell worked in the prison tailor shop, a supervisor, someone the inmates saw every day. Authorities say she was groomed, manipulated, drawn into a web of lies and promises. She allegedly smuggled them tools hidden inside hamburger meat, power tools that could cut through steel, tools that would carve a path to freedom. The escape itself was almost cinematic. Using those tools, they drilled through walls, descended 4 stories, and squeezed through 24-inch pipes. They navigated a maze of catwalks and tunnels, traveling 300 to 400 yards underground. Finally, they cut open a manhole cover, just 1 block from the prison walls. And then they were gone. When morning came, and the cells were empty, panic spread like wildfire. More than 1,000 law enforcement officers flooded the region. Helicopters circled overhead. Roadblocks appeared on every highway. The dense forests of upstate New York became a battlefield. The inmates had made the U.S. Marshal's most wanted list. $50,000 for each man. Their faces plastered on posters from the Canadian border to Mexico. But Mitchell never showed up with the getaway car. She checked herself into a hospital with a panic attack, leaving Matt and Sweat stranded. Their plan for Mexico died before it started, so they turned north, toward Canada, disappearing into the wilderness. For 2 weeks, they were ghosts. No trace, no clues. The community lived in fear, locking doors, checking shadows. Where were they? How were they surviving? Then, on a quiet Saturday morning, a hunter named John Stockwell arrived at his cabin with his dog. Something was wrong. Signs of forced entry, food missing, and then he saw someone running into the trees. Police arrived and found DNA evidence inside. The breakthrough they desperately needed. The net was tightening, but by then, something else had happened. Sweat and Matt, brothers in escape, had split up. Sweat felt Matt was slowing him down. In the brutal mathematics of survival, loyalty meant nothing. Matt found shelter in an abandoned camper just 15 miles from where Sweat would eventually be captured. Peeling walls, torn curtains, a tea kettle still sitting on the stove. He had food, he had shelter, but he was running out of time. On Friday afternoon, Matt made his final mistake. He tried to carjack a couple driving past. They escaped and drove 8 miles before discovering a bullet hole through their camper. Border Patrol agents followed the trajectory back into the woods. One agent heard a cough. There, in the dense forest, was Richard Matt. When he refused to surrender, the agent fired. 3 shots to the head. The first fugitive was dead. 48 hours later, on a Sunday afternoon, State Police Sergeant Jay Cook was patrolling near the Canadian border, a 21-year veteran and firearms instructor. He knew the area well. Then he saw him, a man jogging along the roadside. David Sweat, just miles from freedom. When Sweat spotted the officer, he ran. Cook gave chase through an open field toward a thick tree line. If Sweat reached those trees, he might disappear forever. Sergeant Cook fired twice. Both shots found their target. Sweat collapsed before he could reach the forest edge. In his bag, authorities found tools, bug spray, maps, and Pop-Tarts. The supplies of a desperate man who had come within 2 miles of crossing into Canada. After 22 days, the manhunt was over. David Sweat survived his injuries and was rushed to the hospital in serious condition. As he recovered, he began talking to investigators, revealing details of their elaborate plan and their brutal weeks on the run. The investigation expanded beyond the escape itself. How had security failed so catastrophically? Questions swirled around Joyce Mitchell and whether others had helped. Authorities launched a wider examination of Clinton Correctional Facility, uncovering troubling evidence of corruption and even heroin trafficking within the prison walls. The surveillance systems, the policies, the people meant to prevent such escapes had all failed, and a community had paid the price in fear. Today, David Sweat remains behind bars, serving out his sentence with additional time for the escape. Joyce Mitchell was convicted and imprisoned for her role in the breakout, but the questions remain. How did 2 convicted killers manipulate the system so completely? How did they survive for 3 weeks in the wilderness? And how close did they really come to vanishing forever? The Dannemora escape exposed cracks in a system designed to be unbreakable. It revealed the deadly combination of desperation, manipulation, and human error. And it reminded us that sometimes, the most dangerous escapes happen long before anyone notices the empty cells. Stephen Lawrence was murdered because he was black. Few crimes in recent memory have shaken a nation so deeply or left such a lasting scar. Words like injustice, watershed, and landmark swirl around the Lawrence case. But what truly sets it apart, what makes it the story that reshaped Britain, is the nightmare that unfolded after the killing. The murder itself was horrifying, beyond comprehension, yet the failures that followed defied belief. I remember the Stephen Lawrence case like it was yesterday. It happened the day before my daughter's birthday, on the 22nd of April, 1993. The details stick with you. It felt like nothing short of a twisted game, almost sport for an American audience. You might draw parallels, and that's part of what made it so shocking. It wasn't some deep South Mississippi lynching, but it came chillingly close. This is the bus stop where Stephen Lawrence was brutally stabbed to death in a savage racial attack. Today, the stop has changed, with new benches even, but nothing erases the horror. The spot stands as a grim symbol of the darkest chapter in British race relations. 2 boys, Stephen and his friend, waiting at a bus stop in southeast London one evening. Out of nowhere, and unprovoked assault. One escaped. Stephen did not. 5 young white men ended his life. As the truth emerged, through relentless digging by the press, we learned these killers had rehearsed such attacks in their bedrooms. The premeditation chilled everyone to the bone. In the days after, police got tip-offs pointing straight to the same 5 suspects. Brothers Neil and Jamie Eckort, Gary Dobson, Luke Knight, and David Norris. Their gang was named 26 times as the killers right after the murder. Miss Lawrence handed over her own list, only to watch the officer fold it, then crumple it into a ball before her eyes. The Mets in action kicked off a chain of injustices that tormented the family for over 2 decades. Weeks passed, no arrests. The Lawrences held a press conference, venting their rage at the stalled hunt for the killers. 2 days on, they met Nelson Mandela. He paused his British visit to shake their hands publicly. Privately, he listened when no one in power would, and said they are used to this type of thing where life is regarded as cheap in South Africa, and that it's a sense of disconcert that it should happen in a country like Britain.
Very used to this type of thing where life is regarded as cheap in South Africa. But nevertheless, it's a sense of disconcert that it should happen in a country like Britain.
2 massive shadows loomed, a young black man slain on a London street, and a botched police probe laced with racial bias. It's a racist society that it doesn't matter. As for a black person, that is, it doesn't matter what standard of life you try to achieve for yourself. It makes no difference in cases like this. You are treated as if you're a criminal, right from the start. In 1994, a year later, covert video filmed by police over days in a suspect's apartment captured the gang wielding knives and spewing violent racist slurs. The probe stalled. The system failed them. Stephen's parents fought back. In 1996, Doreen and Neville Lawrence launched a private prosecution against 3 suspects, the first for murder in the UK in over a century. Justice slipped away again. The judge ordered not guilty verdicts, ID evidence tossed out, not enough left to proceed. Acquittals meant no retrials. Racism here splits into individual hate and the institutional kind baked into the system. Most folks bristle at being called racist, yet we thrive in a setup that's clearly rigged. In 1997, the family complained formally to the police complaints authority about the Mets' mishandling. Soon, the Daily Mail splashed a front page accusing the men of murder, daring them to sue. Surprising, given the Daily Mail's rep as the UK's Fox News equivalent, tackling what felt like a CNN tale, that murderer's headline, with their photos. A bold move. Media and public outrage mounted, pressuring the new Labour government. By summer 1997, Home Secretary Jack Straw met the Lawrences. A judicial inquiry followed into the police handling. This inquiry will have full powers to compel the attendance of witnesses, to give evidence under oath, and if they fail to do so, to punish them as if it were a contempt of court. Led by retired Judge Sir William Macpherson, it ran 59 days, 88 witnesses, over 100,000 pages. At its core, claims racism tainted the probe, and society itself. A beacon for Black Britain, shaping race relations ahead. The gang testified, warned of prosecution otherwise. Crowds massed outside. What do we want? Justice. Who for? Stephen Lawrence. At the inquest, suspects clammed up. Jury ruled unlawful killing in an unprovoked racist attack. Tensions exploded. Inquiry paused 3 hours after police gassed protesters. The men spat and lashed out as cops hustled them away. In 1999, Macpherson's 70 recommendations damned the Met as institutionally racist. The force struggled to face it. Sir William grilled Commissioner Sir Paul on ingrained racism. He denied it. I find it difficult after 5 years for the commissioner to still be saying that he felt that there was no racism or corruption involved in Stephen's case. So, if that wasn't racism and it wasn't corruption, I still haven't been given the answer as to why Stephen's killers are still walking free. Changes came. Police reforms. The Race Relations Amendment Act in 2000, aiming to end discrimination. But racism weaves deep into society's fabric, not easily unraveled. The inquiry exposed institutional rot, but delivered no convictions. 11 years on, 3 investigations, 2 reviews, 1 inquiry, killers free. CPS deemed it unsolvable. Then, in 2005, Double Jeopardy scrapped, per McPherson's advice. No new evidence, slim hope. The Lawrences overturned every barrier. Forensic breakthroughs, blood on Dobson's jacket, 1 in a billion odds, not Stevens. Fibers on a cardigan. Cold case review tied 2 acquitted suspects back. In 2011, Gary Dobson and David Norris's trial began. Justice crawled, 19 years for convictions. Doreen saw suspects walk free repeatedly. It's 19 years later, 19 years. Let me say that again, before Dobson and Norris were imprisoned. Extraordinary. The weight, and her unyielding resolve. We pay tribute to Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence's courage and dignity. They have contributed to major changes within policing, the law, and indeed within society as a whole. Doreen campaigned on, for her son and others. In 2013, she became Baroness Lawrence for her tireless community work. She is etched into Britain's soul through her sacrifices. Perhaps the pivotal black justice fight here in decades. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Policing remains a flashpoint for racial wrongs in the UK. Despite Lawrence Sparks and McPherson, black and minority folks face outsized stops, jail time, custody deaths. We need to remember that the UK is not innocent. We are a physical representation of our support for George Floyd. We are a physical representation of our support for Stephen Lawrence. A tough talk on race awaits. Evidence screams, racism's in this nation's DNA. In the heart of November 2010, a love story turned into a nightmare that gripped the world. Annie Duani, a radiant 28-year-old newlywed, was found dead in the back of a minivan in a crime-ridden township near Cape Town, South Africa. Her death shattered her family, sparked a media storm, and left a trail of questions that linger to this day. Was this a random act of violence? Or was it a meticulously planned murder orchestrated by the man who vowed to love her forever? This is the haunting story of Annie Duani's murder, a case where truth remains elusive, and a silent witness, the surveillance camera, holds secrets that may never fully unravel. Ini Hindocha was born in Sweden to parents of Ugandan descent, forced to flee their homeland in the 1970s under Idi Amin's brutal regime. Settling in Mariestad, Ini grew up as the vibrant heart of her family. Her father, Vinod, described her as intelligent, ambitious, and confident, the glue that held them together. After graduating university, she moved to Stockholm, working in marketing for Ericsson, but her heart yearned for love and a family of her own. Her frequent trips to London brought her into the orbit of Shran Duani, a wealthy 30-year-old businessman from Bristol, whose family had also fled Uganda. Their meeting, arranged by an aunt at a coffee shop, sparked a romance that seemed destined for greatness. Although Annie didn't seem to like him straight away, after the second date, she had warmed to him, her sister recalled. Their love story, however, wasn't without turbulence. Friends described them as headstrong, often clashing over the distance between Stockholm and Bristol. Annie eventually left her job and moved to Luton to be closer to Shran. Their families met, and Vinod, though intimidated by the Duani family's wealth, found Shran polite, educated, and driven. Everyone had really liked Shran, Vinod said, noting Shran's commitment to his religion, refusing sex before marriage, a sign, he believed, of dedication to honor. In October 2010, their lavish 3-day wedding near Mumbai dazzled hundreds of guests. Yet, some of Annie's friends felt uneasy. It didn't feel like Annie was very present, one said, while another called the wedding a strange experience. 3 weeks later, the couple embarked on their honeymoon in South Africa, a destination Shrayan chose, saying it was an S for Shrayan and an A for Annie. But the dream turned dark on November 12, 2010, when they landed in Cape Town, opting for a local taxi over the hotel service. They were driven by Zola Tongo, a man whose name would soon haunt this tragedy. The next evening, Tongo picked them up for dinner, but the couple, not in the mood for a heavy meal, ended up at the Surfside restaurant in Strand. Annie, Shrayan claimed, was eager to see South Africa's raw and real culture, insisting Tongo drive them through Gugulathu, a township notorious for its high crime rate, with over 700 murders between 2005 and 2010. She insisted. Tongo later told police. At 10:45 that night, terror struck. Two armed men rushed Tongo's minivan, banging on the windows with guns drawn. They forced Tongo out, drove the couple for nearly an hour, and stole Shrian's watch, phone, and Annie's jewelry. Shrian was thrown onto the street, while Annie, hysterical, was driven away. A resident found Shrian distraught, knocking on doors to report the carjacking. By 8 the next morning, police found the minivan in Fielice, 20 minutes from Gugulethu. Inside lay Annie's body, a single bullet wound in her neck. Her life bled out on the back seat. She would have bled to death, the coroner confirmed. The investigation moved swiftly, fueled by global outrage. Tongo, initially cooperative, led police to Khalil Mngeni, whose fingerprints were found in the vehicle. Mngeni confessed, pointing to Zwamadota Kwabe as the third man. A phone found under Mngeni's mattress belonged to Tongo, raising suspicions. Soon, a fourth name emerged, Mzwamadota Mbolo, a hotel receptionist. All three were arrested, but the case took a shocking turn when Tongo, entering a plea bargain, claimed Shrian orchestrated the murder. According to the CCTV, Shrian spent almost 10 minutes talking to Tongo in the car. Investigators noted, alleging Shrian said he wanted someone taken off the scene. Tongo claimed Shrian offered 15,000 rand, less than 1,000 pounds for the hit. The CCTV in the hotel in Bolo worked at had audio as well, and during one of the calls he said, "It's that thing we were talking about. It must happen today," court records revealed. CCTV footage became the silent hero, capturing critical moments. One clip showed Shrian and Tongo in the Cape Grace hotel lobby, the day after Annie's death. Shrian talks to the cleaner for a second, and Tongo said that this conversation was Shrian asking him to give the person privacy, prosecutors stated. After the cleaner left, Tongo claimed Shrian asked if the job had been done. Shrian looked up at the camera before turning away. Another clip showed Shrian carrying a white envelope, handing it to Tongo in a private room. The state said they believed this was the money that had been promised for the hit. Prosecutors argued, though Shrian's lawyers insisted it was payment for Tongo's driving services. The trial, beginning in 2014, was a media frenzy. Shrian pleaded not guilty, revealing he was bisexual and had visited male prostitutes, a fact Annie's family felt betrayed by. They were prepared to sue him for not being honest, they said. Text messages from Annie painted a troubled marriage. "Crying has become my new hobby," she wrote, "and I don't feel happy with him at all." Yet, Tongo's testimony, the prosecution's cornerstone, crumbled under cross-examination, riddled with contradictions. "The police must have added things into my statements," Tongo claimed. Mngeni Kwabi and Mbolo also admitted to perjury, undermining the case. On the 23rd day, Judge Jeanette Traverso dismissed the charges, stating, "The evidence presented in this case falls far below this threshold." Shrian was acquitted. Annie's family was devastated. "We feel we have been let down by the justice system, and Annie has been let down too," they said. Mngeni died in prison from a brain tumor. Kwabe and Tongo served reduced sentences, and Mbolo walked free. The CCTV, the silent hero, captured fragments of truth, but the full story remains locked in that fateful night. Annie's uncle lamented, "Guessing what happened and knowing what happened are two different things. We want to know what happened." As time fades, Annie's memory endures, a beacon of love lost in a tragedy that refuses to yield its secrets. The surveillance footage is ordinary, too ordinary. It captures a man moving through the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas like any other guest. He plays video poker for hours, buys snacks at a newsstand, and watches a LeBron James interview in a restaurant. Sometimes he chats with hotel staff, but behind this facade of normalcy lies something far darker. This is Stephen Paddock, a man whose name would become synonymous with the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history. For 7 days, the unblinking eye of the surveillance camera recorded his every move, revealing a methodical plan unfolding in plain sight. It begins on Monday, September 25th, 2017. At the VIP counter, Paddock checks into a suite on the 32nd floor. He also books an adjoining room, one he won't occupy for another 4 days. He doesn't bring suitcases immediately. Instead, he spends 2 hours wandering the hotel, even stopping for sushi downstairs. Just before 5 in the evening, he drives his Chrysler Pacifica minivan to the valet. A bellman loads 5 suitcases onto a cart. Paddock insists on staying with his luggage, so the bellman escorts him through the service elevators to his room. Hotel management later said this wasn't unusual. Paddock spends the next 4 hours in his room. Then, at 9:40 that night, he leaves, carrying 2 suitcases. He drives an hour to Mesquite, where he lives. Cell phone records show he spends most of Tuesday there. Around 8 in the evening, Paddock returns to Las Vegas. But he doesn't go straight to the Mandalay. He stops at the Ogden, a downtown condominium complex. This is intriguing. Paddock had rented rooms here all week, checking in the previous Friday during the Life is Beautiful festival. Police later recovered internet records, showing he had searched for the festival's lineup and expected attendance. Was the Ogden a backup plan? Or was it just another piece of his research? We may never know. What we do know is that later that night, Paddock returns to the Mandalay. A different bellman helps him move 7 more suitcases to his suite. He tips the bellman, who has no idea what's inside those cases. Paddock gambles for 8 hours straight. He's a regular here. Several casino hosts know him. The footage shows their interactions as completely normal. Nothing alarming, nothing suspicious. In just 2 days, Paddock has brought 12 cases to his room. He spends most of Wednesday there, and that evening, he repeats the pattern. He leaves the Mandalay, carrying 2 suitcases. He stops at the Ogden again, before driving home to Mesquite. On Thursday, he buys a .308 bolt-action rifle from a gun store and visits a nearby gun range. Then, he drives back to the Mandalay. That night, he uses the valet service again. A bellman carries a white container and 3 more suitcases to his room. His arsenal is growing. It's now Friday. The Route 91 Harvest Festival opens that evening across from the Mandalay. Paddock stays in his room until around 3 in the afternoon. He uses his laptop while the suite is cleaned. Then, he checks into the adjoining room using his girlfriend's name, Marilou Damley. He tells the cleaning staff to leave behind the food service cart. 2 days later, he would use this cart, and another, to create a surveillance ring during his attack. Overnight, he makes a brief trip to Mesquite, returning at 6 in the morning with 2 more suitcases. Soon after noon on Saturday, he places "Do Not Disturb" signs on both room doors. He declines housekeeping. He takes an elevator to the valet area and waits for his car. He carries 2 more bags to his room. He gambles some more. That night, he makes one final trip to Mesquite, returning to the Mandalay at 3 in the morning on Sunday. He gambles through the night and returns to his room at 7:37 in the morning. At 12:16 in the afternoon, the surveillance camera captures Paddock heading back to the parking garage. The guests exiting the elevator have no idea that in 10 hours, this unremarkable figure will commit the worst mass shooting in modern American history. He returns from his car, bringing 2 suitcases and a smaller bag. Since Monday, he has moved at least 21 cases, 2 smaller bags, a laptop bag, and a container to his room. This is the last time we see him. Throughout the day, he opens, closes, and locks both rooms repeatedly. At 36 minutes after 9, he locks the deadbolt to room 135 for the last time. 4 minutes later, Jason Aldean, headlining the festival, begins his act. Paddock turns the deadbolt to room 134. At 10:05, his shooting rampage begins. In under 10 minutes, he kills 58 people and injures over 700 before taking his own life. He had amassed 23 guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Almost 6 months later, Paddock's motive remains unknown. The surveillance camera saw it all, but by the time anyone realized what was happening, it was already too late. It looked like any other house in a quiet suburb outside of Belgrade, Serbia's capital, a modest structure, ordinary in appearance, surrounded by neighbors who never suspected anything unusual. Yet, in 2021, when police carried out a search, they uncovered a horror hidden behind its garage. A door led to a concealed underground room, and inside that room was not storage, not tools, not household supplies. What they found was an industrial meat grinder, but this machine had not been used for livestock. It had been used on people. Authorities would later learn that this house had become a slaughterhouse, a place where victims were lured, tortured, decapitated, dismembered, and then disposed of. Their bodies were cut into small pieces, ground and bagged. The remains were carried to the Danube River, one of Europe's great waterways, and dumped, never to be seen again. The story might have remained buried, if not for an unexpected twist. The criminal group responsible documented everything. They took photographs of their victims before, during, and after the killings. They did not hide the evidence. They bragged with it. They sent the images to friends for amusement, to their allies for proof of loyalty, and to their enemies as a warning. What they never imagined was that those same images would one day fall into the hands of law enforcement. The killers had relied on specially encrypted phones. The devices, built by a Canadian company called Sky Global, were marketed as unbreakable. They promised privacy through self-destructing messages and remote wipe features. Criminal networks across Europe bought them in bulk. For years, they felt untouchable, believing that no one could ever break into their communications. But in 2019, European authorities began a massive cross-border investigation. They suspected Sky Global's phones were being used almost exclusively by organized crime groups. By 2020, investigators had tracked the servers to France, and with the help of a specialized encryption unit, they cracked the group messaging system. More than 2 million messages became visible, exposing secret deals, trafficking operations, and grisly photos exchanged by criminal gangs. Among those messages were the pictures from the Belgrade slaughterhouse. Authorities were horrified, but they knew the evidence could not be ignored. They passed the files to Serbian investigators, who quickly identified one man at the center of it all. His name was Veljko Belivuk. Belivuk was not an unknown figure. He was already infamous in Serbia as a football hooligan and gang leader. His crew called themselves the Principi, or the Principled. They were muscle for hire, often seen in the stands of Belgrade's Partizan football team, where organized crime groups recruited aggressively. In the Balkans, football gangs are more than sports fans. They are power structures, linked to politics, money, and violence. At the time, two major clans controlled the criminal underworld, the Kovac clan and the Shkagari clan. Locked in a brutal war, they killed each other with car bombs, sniper attacks, and drive-by shootings. Belivuk's Principe aligned themselves with the Kovac clan, but Belivuk wanted his group to stand out. He devised a chilling motto: no body, no crime. The hidden room in the suburban home was his answer. It was the perfect place to make people disappear. Victims were lured inside, usually by someone they trusted. Once trapped, they were tortured and killed. Their remains were processed in the grinder, bagged, and carried to the river. Without a body, Belivuk believed police would never be able to charge him. The Sky messages, however, told the full story. They showed his men preparing, waiting, and even celebrating after killings. Some of the images were so graphic that investigators debated whether they could ever be shown in court. Illustrations later reconstructed the events from the testimony of gang members who turned witnesses. One of the first victims was not even an enemy. He was Belivuk's own friend, suspected of betrayal. Witnesses recalled how the group carved the word treason into his back before decapitating him with an axe. His remains were ground and dumped into the Danube. Another victim was a member of the rival Skaljari clan. He was tricked into believing he was meeting to buy a gun. Instead, he was kidnapped, taken to the slaughterhouse, and killed. His killers mocked him by writing insults in his own blood before sending pictures of his body to his boss. The brutality seemed endless. Another victim was lured under the same pretense of a gun deal. Once inside the house, the group toyed with him, taking pictures, mocking his clothing, and pretending he still had a chance of leaving alive. Minutes later, he too was killed and fed into the grinder. For Serbian investigators, the case was explosive. Belivuk and his group were not just criminals. Their rise had long been linked to political protection. Journalists had reported for years that government officials turned a blind eye to their activities. Now, with Sky messages exposing everything from torture to casual chats with police officers, those suspicions grew stronger. One secret police report revealed that messages between Bolivuk and a senior gendarme had been deliberately withheld from evidence. In those texts, the officer referenced Dijana Harkulovic, one of the most powerful police officials in Serbia at the time. She was later charged with abuse of office, though the case quietly faded and she was released. The officer remained in uniform. During his trial, Bolivuk himself claimed he had worked at the service of President Aleksandar Vučić, carrying out tasks on behalf of the government. That testimony was suppressed, but investigative journalists published it anyway. The implication was clear. The state may have relied on men like Bolivuk when it suited their purposes. For ordinary Serbians, the revelations were shocking, but not entirely surprising. Rumors of ties between politics, police, and organized crime had circulated for decades. The slaughterhouse case, however, provided something far more tangible than rumors. It provided evidence, drawn from the killer's own phones, that not only exposed their sadism, but also hinted at protection from above. In court, Bolivuk denied direct involvement in the murders, but the evidence spoke louder than his denials. Photos, messages, and witness testimony painted a consistent picture. He was convicted, along with his crew, yet questions lingered about how high the protection went, and why it took so long to stop them. The story of the slaughterhouse is not just about a gang of killers. It is about how modern technology, once believed to provide perfect secrecy, betrayed them. It is about how encrypted phones, designed to hide messages forever, were cracked and used to reveal horrors. And it is about how organized crime can thrive when politics and law enforcement fail to confront it. For the families of the victims, there is little comfort in knowing the killers are behind bars. Many bodies were never recovered, leaving loved ones without closure. The Danube carried away the evidence, leaving only photographs and testimony to fill the silence. And for Serbia, the scandal still echoes. If Bolivuk's claims of political service hold any truth, then the question is not just who ordered the killings, but who allowed the killers to believe they could act with impunity. The house still stands as a reminder. From the outside, it is unremarkable, a simple building on a quiet street. But for those who know its story, it is a symbol of how darkness can hide in plain sight, waiting only for someone to open the wrong door. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you found this video informative, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what we drop next. We cover stories like this almost every day, and trust me, you don't want to be left behind. If you can't wait until the next upload, there are more videos popping up on your screen in just a few seconds. Click one and keep watching. Until then, take care. I'm out.